Ljudi, dobar dan. Čovjek se već popeo sa mnom gore, vjerujem da jedva čekate čuti njegovo predavanje, a s obzirom da ste ovdje, vjerujem da ste sve itekako, neću reći naučili, ali pročitali što ima o njemu i u katalogu Wikimedia festivala, kome još nismo rekli dobar dan, dobar dan i dobrodošli. Dakle, ozbiljne igrice i njihov kontekst kao takav, dakle, doista je široko polje. U svom će predavanju Onat reći kako one mogu utjecati na društvo, na koji se način mogu iskoristiti te digitalne aplikacije u interaktivnim medijima i za, dakle, društveno dobro, ali i za učenje i za treniranje i još sijaset načina na koji igrice mogu djelovati na naš život. On je završio studij filma, potom je završio studij game dizajna, još je uvijek u obrazovanju, ide sada na svoju 3. titulu, a u tijeku je izrada njegove igrice koja izlazi sljedeće godine, na kojoj radi već 8 godina. No vjerujem da će sve detalje puno bolje ispričati on sam. Dame i gospodo, molim vas da pozdravite jednim velikim pljeskom njega, glavom i bradom. On je Onat Hekimoglu!
Thank you. Thanks for this wonderful introduction, even though I didn't understand anything, but yeah. So, I guess you already told that my name is Onat Hekimoglu. I'm a game designer, composer, and filmmaker based in Cologne, Germany. And today I'm going to talk about serious games. I actually chose a rather different structure for this presentation, as I want to give you insight into this topic from different perspectives. There might be parts where you are going to be a little confused, but don't panic. You are going to get the key message the further we proceed. I also want to show you some very different examples to give you a broad overview, so this will be a huge part of the presentation. So let's begin with the obvious. What is a serious game, actually? I mean, all of you have seen some examples, learning games, for example. This is a simple math learning game for kids. And it, packs the abstract topic of maths into something more, approachable. We have advertising in games, or advert games, too. We have simulations. You all have seen a flight simulator of one kind. But to sum all of this up, we have many more different categories. We have news games, we have games about politics, we have corporate games, learning games, yeah. But to sum it all up, a serious game is a game designed for a primary purpose other than pure entertainment. That means games created with a serious purpose in mind, a professional or educational goal. Serious games can be useful when you want to convey a complicated message which might be too difficult or too boring. Now, to understand why games might be more suitable in delivering these messages, it's helpful to look into how modern media works first. So we are living amid a trend to simplify and isolate ideas, questions, and problems as much as possible. In television, we have short messages and sound bites. Media training encourages us to synopsize, to condense, and if you look at the internet as a major information source, we see tweets which now at least consist of 280 characters, blogs with numerous lists, and even lists about lists, and even newspapers which changed over time to reflect the changes that we have in our consumption of media. This is a German newspaper, a special kind of it actually. There is Die Welt, which is the normal one, and Weltkompakt is a variation of that actually compresses the information into shorter bits, which has a bigger text size than usual newspapers have and have bigger pictures. So the idea is that you get the information that you need in a shorter amount of time and in a more compressed and suitable way. So there are a lot of reasons for this development. Our attention span for the passive consumption of information gets shorter the further we proceed and the more is happening around us and through the internet. So why might games be able to tackle more complex topics than what we know in terms of other media? Why might games be more suitable for this? Let's start with a more specific example. I want to talk a bit about a game that I worked on a few years ago. But let's talk about dreams first. So we all have dreams, I guess. I dream of Harold Talbot, for example, which is my current game project, that we have success when we release it next year, that players like it, as I hope. Maybe some of you dream of becoming the CEO of the company you work for. Maybe some of you want to become a rock star. But who of you dreams of becoming homeless? Well, that's a rhetorical question. I guess no one would, because we always try to imagine ourselves being in places or in situations that enhance our lives, that are better for us. That's maybe also the reason why we tend to ignore problems like this, look away, give away responsibility, thinking that they might just disappear. The problem is that all those problems grow bigger by ignoring them. And that's the reason why we made a game to raise awareness for the situation of homeless people. And that's why we created Outcasted, a game that actually lets you experience how it feels to be homeless. I want to show you a trailer first.
Ich war mal Ingenieur. Guter Job. Sicherer Job. Naja, zumindest dachte ich das. Die Medikamente, die den Ausbruch meiner Krankheit verhindern sollten, sind voller Nebenwirkungen. Ständige Müdigkeit, Muskel- und Kopfschmerzen, Übelkeit. Ich konnte in dem Zustand einfach nicht arbeiten, so gern ich das auch getan hätte. Es dauerte nicht lange, bis sie einen Ersatz für mich suchten. Die Nebenwirkungen ließen nach. Irgendwann gewöhnt man sich halt an alles. Doch leider hat kein Arbeitgeber Interesse an einem 46-Jährigen. Auf meinem Schreibtisch stapelten sich die Mahnungen. Ich wollte nicht so lange warten, bis der Gerichtsvollzieher vor meiner Tür stand. Und der ganze Papierkrieg, durch den man sich durchkämpfen muss, die ganzen Behördengänge, wenn man in einem Bürokratiestaat auf Hilfe hofft, geben einem auch nicht gerade Hoffnung. So verließ ich mein altes Leben, verdrängte all die schlimmen Dinge und ließ nur noch Platz für Erinnerungen an eine Zeit, in der noch alles gut war. Ein deutscher Philosoph hat einst gesagt, im Grunde sind es immer die Verbindungen mit Menschen, die dem Leben seinen Wert geben. Wenn man einsam auf der Straße sitzt, beginnt man diesen Gedanken zu verstehen. Mein Name ist Paul und das ist meine Geschichte.
Okay, so how does it work? Outcasted is a virtual reality simulation, basically. So basically, you sit on the side of the street, and the only thing you can do to control the game is look around and try to get in eye contact with all the passers-by. Besides of that, you have no choice or ability to control anything. And as you have seen, we have no interface like a point scale or a time limit or something like that. So the player never knows what happens and what has to be done that it happens. This is just a short interaction. I will come back to that later. The question is, why did we choose to make a serious game about this topic and not write a book or make a film about that? Oh, sorry. why, to come back to the question from before, why might games be more suitable for this than other media? Because they are interactive. And interactivity lets us actively experience things and be part of them rather than passively consuming information. The interactivity lets us feel the situation rather than seeing or reading about it. Let's go back to the flight simulator example from before. If we compare it with books and films about planes, for example, if you read a book about a plane and really dig deep into it, we might learn what terms like altitude or the throttle means and so on. But we will not be able to fly a plane. If you watch a teaching film about how to fly a plane, we might even know where all those different levers and knobs are placed and how to use them, but we will still not be able to fly a plane. But if you sit inside a flight simulator, you will actually learn how to fly a plane. And that's the power of interactivity. And that's why games let us experience how it is to fly or to be homeless. So if we compare games with other media, there are two different aspects that I want to talk about: the models and the roles. A model is basically a smaller, abstracted version of a complex system. Models describe the logic by which complex systems work. In the case of the flight simulator, we have a model of a real plane. And even if we don't have like the sensory feeling of being in a plane or so, we have at least the physical properties of this plane and the way this plane works. Games also put us in roles, and in games we make decisions in those roles that are constrained by this model of the game. So in commercial games, it's usually power fantasies of adolescent boys. So you're the space marine and have to fight aliens to save the humanity or something like that. In a flight simulator, the role is the role of a pilot. So you are the pilot inside of this model of a plane and you have to fly. But the interesting thing is you can do that without being a pilot. The demand on you as a pilot is basically the same that you would have in the real life flying a real plane, but you don't have the consequences. So the first time you sit in a flight simulator, you will crash the plane, I think. You will fly into a mountain or whatever, or you are not even able to start the plane. But it doesn't matter. So you are kind of thrown into the cold water and are able to experience this system, this model of the plane, and try to fly. And by doing this, you learn without having to fear to crash, land, and die. Let's look at Autocasted again. So we have the model of a city here. Of course, we could, it's like I said, a simplified and abstract model. Of course, we could have made it more detailed and we could have given the player the ability to walk around, for example, go to different places. But through the reduction of the model, we can more specifically deliver the core message of being helpless and let the player experience the situation. In this case, we are not able to move anywhere, so the only thing we can do is actually look around and wait until something happens. And in the case of this game, it can happen that you wait for 20 minutes until something happens, so it's really frustrating. Let's talk a bit about games in general. So what is a game, or what defines a game? Well, all games share actually 4 defining traits: a goal, rules, a feedback system, and the voluntary participation. So a goal is actually the specific outcome that players will work to achieve. It gives the player a sense of purpose. Why are you doing this? The rules are the limitations on how players can achieve the goal, removing or limiting obvious ways of getting to the goal. They are there to unleash creativity and foster strategic thinking. Then we have a feedback system. The feedbacks, these are, for example, points, scores, levels, a progress bar that informs the player about how far you are on the way to achieve this goal, and also when the game is over. It's basically a promise that the goal is achievable and gives the player the motivation to achieve this goal. And then, of course, there's the voluntary participation. No one would like to play if you are forced to play. So the voluntary participation describes the willingness to accept the goals, the rules, and the feedback system, and it establishes common ground. A philosopher named Bernard Suits had a really nice summary of this, actually. Playing a game is the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. So if you look at golf, for example, it's hitting a ball with a stick into a hole which is 100 meters far away. Of course, to achieve this goal, if you would think in a logical, real-world way, you would just take the ball, walk to the hole, and put it in there, because that's what you are trying to achieve. But we have these unnecessary obstacles because, yeah, it's a game, and it's fun this way. We have the voluntary participation. No one plays golf without wanting to play. Maybe if you are a child and your parents force you to. But, and we have a feedback system. We can count the points that we have and compare ourselves to other players. If you look at Scrabble, it's about spelling the best word you can actually imagine, but you have a limited amount of letters. So let's look at Outcasted again in terms of these 4 defining traits. Well, in this case, the goal is not so clear, because is it about getting money, getting attraction, getting people to talk with you? So in our attempt of designing it, it's actually having this experience. But let's pretend the players would think it's about getting money. The rules are clear. You can't move, and you can't actually do anything besides of looking around. The feedback system is basically not there. The only thing that is there is that sometimes someone gives you money or talks with you, but you don't have a progress bar. You don't have a goal in front of your view. You don't know when you are going to win the game. Actually, you can't. It's an endless thing. You don't even have a counter that counts how much money you collected. And yeah, the voluntary participation is obviously there. So is Outcasted a good game? Well, it's an obvious thing. No, in terms of a game, it's not, because it's not fun at all. It's super frustrating. You have no idea what to do. You're sitting there waiting that something happens. But it still serves its purpose as a serious game, and it delivers this experience. And that's a huge difference if you compare it to an entertainment game. A serious game doesn't have to follow the same rule set, which is aimed at fun if you look at entertainment games. So a serious game can also deliver its purpose without giving the player fun. And in this case, it serves this purpose of letting you experience the frustration of not being able to do something, you know. The field is very huge, as I said in the beginning. We have a chart here which shows like where we tackle different areas, from educational contents, a serious purpose, game techniques, and fun and storytelling. What's important is we don't always have to have all those components, and also it's much more, even the space in between, you know, which is why I thought this chart was interesting. Serious games can be much more than only tackling these areas. And also, it's always difficult to put things in categories, which I'm going to talk about in a bit too. So I want to show you some examples. Dead Dragon Cancer is a game which was released 3 years ago. And technically, it's not a serious game. It's a game that was designed by a couple whose baby was diagnosed with cancer, and inside of the game, they basically describe or let you live through their experience of, you know, caring for this child and trying to find a way to cure his illness. The problem is that there is no way. And there are several parts inside of this game which play around with the usual mechanics that you would get as a player. So you usually, as I described before, know, okay, this is the thing I have to do to solve the situation. And because this is a story which is based on the real world, and because it's a real illness that has no cure, there is no way to cure it. So there is a very emotional scene inside of the game where your baby is crying and you try to do different things to, you know, stop the crying. You try to play with it, and you try to care for it, but the crying actually gets louder and louder because he is suffering from pain. And in this scene, the game shows that there is no way for that. It's also really interesting to look at the ending of the game, which is you are in a church, so this couple is actually a very religious couple, and you are able to light candles. And the obvious thing, without knowing what to do, is if you can light candles, maybe you have to light all of them, and maybe you have to play a certain melody on the keyboard or on the organ thing. So when I played it the first time, I actually tried to light all the candles, but they are never lit all at the same time. And after a while, you discover that the only thing you can do here is actually wait until all the candles go out and the baby dies, basically. So it's, again, you know, without giving you a certain goal that you can achieve, it works as a medium to show you the inability in this case, in this situation, that you have no choice in besides of like letting go. Darfur is Dying is, it came out in April 2006 actually, it stands under the umbrella of serious games and is classified as a news game. In the journalistic spirit of exposing the truth, Darfur is Dying helped to shed a light on the war in Darfur and the consequent humanitarian disaster. I want to show you a little video that explains how the game works.
Darfur is Dying is an online game that attempts to put the player in the shoes of one of the 2.5 million refugees who are struggling to survive in the Darfur region of the Sudan. Players learn about some of the challenges refugees and displaced persons face, as well as how to take action that can help stop the crisis. The player leaves the relative secure confines of the camp in order to find water in the desert landscape. It speaks of children who bear the responsibility of foraging for water because their chances of survival are deemed greater if captured by the Sudanese militias, as women are routinely raped while foraging essentials for their families, and men face a high risk of being murdered. Should your avatar not succeed, you can try again. You must choose another of the remaining 7 avatars, however, as your previous one has perished.
That's again a very interesting mechanic actually, because usually in games when you die, you either load a save game or you have another life. And in Darfur is Dying, you don't. You have a family, and if someone dies, you have to go on because the game doesn't end there. You still have other people and you still want to survive. But it shows you that the things can't, you know, the dead people don't come back. In the same manner, This War of Mine works, which was critically acclaimed and won several prizes. I'll show a trailer.
For soldiers, war is about victory. For us, it was about getting food. I lived through hell with these people. We were a group. We would do anything to stay alive. I will never forget those days. Things you see in war stay with you forever.
A kiedy przyjdzie także po mnie zegarmistrz światła purpurowy, by mi zawełtać błękit w głowie, to będę ja
interesting thing with this war of mine is it's not about, the main topic is actually surviving in the war. And you have a group of people, and you can even meet more people to join your team, basically. The thing is that you don't only have to care for like hiding out, for example, but if you stay, for example, in a safe home-like place, you will starve because you have no food, you have no water, and someone might get ill. So you have to constantly either go by yourself or send your teammates to places to get medicine, to find food, and to find water. And during this process, because it's very much based on how war in reality is, you never know if a place maybe you want to go to isn't occupied by some other people. So it might happen that you send someone to gather food and water, and this person just doesn't come back. It might happen that you break into the hospital just to get killed afterwards by someone else. And this inability to kind of foresee what is going to happen, this inability to prepare yourself for the situation is what makes this game actually so exciting and so realistic in terms of feeling. Again, about war, this time a little different. Games are nowadays also used to cure or help people who are traumatized because of war, ex-soldiers, for example, that can relive the situations that were traumatizing in a virtual reality recreations of the situation, basically. The same thing is not only used, by the way, just for soldiers or so, but can also be used for trauma patients in general to bring them into situations that traumatize them. The next topic I want to touch is gamification, which kind of belongs to serious games. And while all the examples I showed you before were kind of to teach you something or to let you experience certain things, in gamification it's about tackling real-world things through, well, game mechanics. Janie McGonigal is basically the mastermind of gamification. She wrote a book with the name Reality is Broken, Why Games Make Us Better and How They Can Change the World. And she talks about a lot of things on how playing games actually, make the world a better place. It's a really interesting book, and some of her thoughts are a little bit extreme, but there are a lot of interesting things in there, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, that really work in a way. So just to talk about some numbers, if you count all the World of Warcraft players in the world, for example, all of them together have spent 5.93 million years solving the virtual problems of World of Warcraft. And this number is interesting because if you put that into context, 5.93 million years ago was our earliest primate human ancestors stood up. So that was the first upright primate. And all this time, all this work that was spent in this virtual world was, again, looking back into the 4 defining traits, voluntarily done. So people really put insane amounts of work into something that's fun. And her idea is actually, how can we kind of bundle this workforce, this voluntary workforce, to tackle real-world problems? She designed a game which is called World Without Oil some years ago. It's an alternate reality game that lasted for 32 days from April to June 2007. And the game sought to make players understand how an oil crisis might affect their lives by getting them to describe how the crisis is affecting their area. So, let me just show a quick video of this.
The story is that there's the onset of a global oil shock. A group of people have received notification that the shock is going to come on, but they do have a little bit of time to prepare. And what they prepare is the World Without Oil website at worldwithoutoil.org, and they want to collect the stories from everyone who's going through the oil shock. They want to hear what people are experiencing, and so they invite people to essentially write in.
The goal of the game was to have normal people, ordinary citizens from all around the world, tell their story, what their life would be like in a world without oil. And by collecting all of these individual stories, we could paint a future landscape that would really use the collective wisdom of the people on the internet to think about the challenges we might face and some of the solutions we could use to solve an oil crisis.
Yeah, the collective wisdom of the people in the internet, what she talked about, is actually the key aspect in this. After the 32 days of this game, actually, the game produced a valuable record to help anticipate problems and avoid a worst-case scenario that might be used in the future if these events happen in reality. And that's the interesting thing. Nobody wants to change how they live just because it's good for the world, you know, or because we are supposed to. But if you immerse them in an adventure and tell them, we have run out of oil, this is an amazing story and adventure for you to go on, challenge yourself to see how you would survive. It gets much more interesting and delivers results. And most of the players have actually kept the habits that they learned in this game. Jane also worked on another game in 2012, which is called Super Better. She suffered a concussion in 2009, and the resulting symptoms left Jane feeling depressed and suicidal. And while she recovered, she created a game which was called Jane the Concussion Slayer, a game designed to treat her condition as well as keep her occupied. And seeing the success of Jane the Concussion Slayer, she renamed it to Super Better and developed a gamified application to help people achieve goals and overcome obstacles. This is how the game looks like. It's an app that you can actually download for free in the App Store. And what it basically does is it gamifies your daily life. In the beginning of the game, when you create an account, you can actually choose what you want to use it for. So you can choose if you are depressed, for example, if you are anxious, or if you just want to become super better. And now this is the super better mode. It's just mundane tasks, seemingly. Chug a glass of water, got a block, walk around it, which encourages you to walk around the block. Hug yourself, and this seems like very simple and unnecessary tasks, but in the way they are presented, you basically get experience points for every single one of them. You can level up, and it basically gamifies your daily life. And the interesting thing is that results from a randomized control study conducted by the University of Pennsylvania discovered the results that playing Super Better for 30 days improves mood, reduces symptoms of anxiety and depression, and increases belief in the ability to successfully achieve goals. You can also customize the app and add your personal goals, for example, and break them into chunks and then again get experience points for them. In terms of a direct connection between playing games and doing something for the world, basically, there is a very interesting scientific project called Foldit, which is so far, to my knowledge, the farthest attempt to really connect the digital world and the reality and to use gameplay to make things better. So Foldit, which came out 2008, is a scientific project aimed at solving the protein folding problem. Predicting how proteins fold is a very important problem, key to many areas of biology and medicine. Predicting how proteins fold is also a very computationally intense task. It's very difficult to solve. The idea is that humans can come up with solutions that the computer wouldn't consider. So this is how it looks like. It works like a puzzle game, basically. But what you are doing there is actually really folding or unfolding proteins. 3 years after its release, players of the online puzzle game helped decipher the crystal structure of the Pfizer monkey virus, an AIDS-causing virus. And although the solution had troubled the medical science for 15 years. The combined efforts of thousands of players produced an accurate model of the enzyme in only 10 days. Okay, So to wrap it up, a little bit about the term serious games. I talked about it before, that there are like dozens of categories, and I've even shown some examples which are technically not serious games, but kind of go into the same fields and kind of teach you skills. And even things like World of Warcraft, for example, which are mainly entertainment games, can teach you skills like teamwork, you know, trying to be focused, working on a goal, and stuff like that. Which is why the naming serious games is actually kind of trying to separate entertainment and serious into a simple binary, which in my opinion isn't true, because entertainment can also tackle complex and important issues in meaningful ways. And we know that from film too, for example. We have very accurate historical depictions, for example, from Second World War films, or even Interstellar, which was a Hollywood blockbuster, had the, up to this point, like most accurate visual representation of a real black hole. And the same goes to games. For example, even something as, even a AAA game like Assassin's Creed, for example, has a very accurate representation of the 18th century American Revolution. Yeah, so to sum it up in the end, the takeaway is basically that games deliver intrinsic motivation, which is actually based on the voluntary participation. They also deliver experiences through interactivity, and the experiences actually let us feel the things and empathize with the depicted things. And playing games can help us learn to solve real-world problems. If you're interested in the topic, I would recommend the following two books for further reading, which is the one I talked before, Reality is Broken by Jane McGonigal, and also Persuasive Games by Ian Bogost, which is in general about serious games and also the expressive power of video games in general. That's it so far. Thank you. And if you have questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, so this is more of a comment rather than a question. I'm actually really glad that you mentioned this war of mine, which I actually played quite intensively, and I was wondering what is wrong with the game, because it really doesn't give you any sort of reward in the end. You play it, and you just end up frustrated. And the only thing that you take away from it is that, okay, so you get to survive, and that's it. Maybe for a bit of context for everyone else, it's a game that's placed in fictional Sarajevo. It's not Sarajevo per se. So it's all about survival. You get food, you sometimes have to kill someone to get food, and it all depends on maybe your moral system, your system of values. So this actually gave me another perspective. I never really thought of it as a serious game. I never really thought that it was made to induce some sort of feeling of empathy within you. So
it's actually interesting. How was your feeling playing it then? I mean, without knowing that it's about the serious topic, and maybe you looked at it as a normal game, and of course it's frustrating because it's so difficult.
I mean, I knew the context, that it was. I knew that the company donated their profits to victims of war, but I really didn't have any idea that it was created not just for gaming pleasure, for your entertainment, but also for some sort of higher purpose. So this was an interesting take on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. So I just have a question regarding the empathy problem. Do you have any strategy in making a serious game in order for it to produce empathy with the player?
Well, I wouldn't say that there is a general strategy, but in our experience, for example, especially creating Outcasted, for example, and letting players play it, we discovered that the virtual reality, for example, is a really, really good tool for that. Because, even though visually it is a very abstract depiction of these things, people that played it really felt in the situation, be it because of the perspective, because you are higher, you have to look up, be it because of being constrained to not being able to move and so on. We also talked with a lot of homeless people to get their, ideas about this topic and so on, to kind of deliver the most, fitting approach for this situation. And to give you a general rule, I would say it's really important to know a lot about that topic if you want to really have the players or the people that approach it to empathize with it, and to reduce the surroundings and focus on like a very specific aspect of something, In this war of mine, it's the helplessness in war and the not, you can't kind of plan how it works out. In Outcasted it's about, there is no way to win the game. There is nothing to do beside of that. So the focus is clearly on this inability. To actually empathize with things. I mean, in games in general lets you empathize because of the interactivity. And even if you play an entertainment game, even you can empathize with the character you are playing. But especially through the reduction, the reduction is actually a very powerful tool there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would have a question. I found the concept very interesting of being able to tap in the common knowledge of the world. I think this is something that technology is giving us lately. Are you aware of any? I mean, Wikipedia comes into my mind. It's a huge database that it's not a game, but at the end of the day, it's somehow how we can collect the common knowledge. Are you aware of any big projects in that sense about, I don't know, some very high scientific tasks or something? Because that, I think it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, it definitely is, but I think Folded was like the one I know that kind of, delivers this, I would say, skin on, the approach of doing something scientific by letting it look like games. But besides of that, there are not so many right now. But on the other hand, there is, like you said, a huge potential. And if you look at games, I mean, and all the things that happened, and compare it, for example, with other media like film or books, which are there for like, film is there for over 100 years now, So I would compare it with like going from entertainment to things like serious games and so on is like being in the stage where we invented the audio in the film. So we're still in the beginning, and there is an amazing potential and all those things that are still to be discovered. And it's going to be interesting, definitely.
Thank you.